Hey, so guys, this is Ray and welcome to Asian Filmist. And it's almost the end of February, so that means we're almost done reviewing all these various romantic films from Asia. And today we're going to be talking about the 2006 Japanese film Heavenly Forest. Heavenly Forest is directed by Shinjo Takehiko and it stars Tamaki, Hiroshi, and Miyazaki Aoi. And it's an adaptation of a novel written by Ichikawa Takuji. You might have seen an adaptation of Ichikawa's other works. A personal favorite of mine is not only Heavenly Forest, but also Be With You. And an interesting thing is that Heavenly Forest isn't the only adaptation of this particular novel. There was actually a movie that was released a few years earlier called The College of Our Lives. Now, between the two adaptations, I personally like Heavenly Forest a lot more, especially when I first watched those movies. And rewatching them again in modern times, I definitely still hold that opinion. So the story centers on two university students. One is kind of an introvert who loves photography and named Makoto, and he's played by Tamaki. And another is kind of a weird girl with glasses with disheveled hair, and she's played by Miyazaki. They meet by chance at the entrance to their university, and they happen to share a class together, and they start hanging out. And before you know it, she kind of follows him to a secret getaway spot where he loves to take photos, and that is the titular Heavenly Forest. And she learns to like photography, and she develops some romantic feelings for him, and she decides later on that she wants to enter this amateur photography contest. So as a birthday request to Makoto, the girl whose name is Shizuru, she requests him to be a model, to be the centerpiece of her photo submission, and essentially a photograph of them two kissing. So after they do the deed, she disappears and she's never heard from again until we cut 40 years later where most of the story, where most of the current narrative takes place. And so going on to the positives and negatives I felt were in Heavenly Forest. First, the positives. I absolutely love the performances by both Tamaki Hiroshi and Miyazaki Aoi. And it's movies like this and also Nana that made me a huge fan, that made me really obsessed with Miyazaki Aoi back in the day. I remember, you remember when Netflix was mail order DVD rentals? Yeah, I remember renting a lot of Miyazaki Aoi's more art house films that she started much earlier in her career, just because I was simply obsessed with her because of movies like this. It's kind of like that movie She's All That. You know, they had Rachel Lee Cook pretending to be this kind of nerd that everyone just makes fun of, but then you look at Miyazaki Aoi and she has that same kind of aura where she's this not nerd, but she's this weirdo that everyone thinks dresses weird, her hair is always unkept, but then you know Miyazaki, you look at her, you look at that smile, you know she ain't a weirdo. But Miyazaki Aoi, absolutely stunning, absolutely charming in this film, and props to Tamaki Hiroshi as well. But honestly, the kind of image I have of Tamaki and the characters he plays are kind of solidified because of the TV drama Nodame Kantabire. And seeing him play as this introverted uni student as opposed to this strong dick, it's kind of jarring at first, but he really does play the role well. And this movie being focused on characters who share a love of photography, there are appropriately a ton of fantastic shots of scenery, of the forest in the title, and even shots of when the characters go off to America, to New York, and they kind of venture around the city. And something that I can appreciate about Heavenly Forest is that movies like this, they appeal to the female demographic, but what I like about Heavenly Forest is that it definitely appeals to the male demographic. I mean, any guy who's ever been indecisive about things in their life, who's ever felt an unrequited love, you can definitely connect to Makoto in every one of his experiences. And with the kind of characters and relationships that are featured in Heavenly Forest, I really like the kind of simplicity, the kind of innocence that are featured in them, and it kind of takes you back to Once Upon a Time. But not only is everything simple, everything is genuinely heartwarming. And a definite plus I feel about Heavenly Forest, I mean, if you ever seen Be With You, it shares similar elements to that movie in the sense that there's a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of suspension of belief, and at first, it doesn't make sense, but it really adds to this kind of mysterious flair, this mysterious atmosphere that the story tries to set. And I feel like that element really makes the story unique. And above all else, this movie is a genuine tearjerker. I mean, if you aren't grabbed by the chemistry between the two leads or their charming personalities and characters, then the way the story plays out will get to you. And there was a time when I was a huge fan of J-pop artist Otsuka Ai, and she sings the ending theme to this movie. And actually, the Japanese title of Heavenly Forest, it comes from lyrics from this song. Needless to say, the ending theme song, I had it on loop for quite a while. So now let's talk about the negatives I felt were in Heavenly Forest. And honestly, I really didn't have anything negative to say about this movie from a personal standpoint. Granted, one of the only things I can think about is that this movie dives into very familiar territory when it comes to love triangles and unrequited love and situations that relate to not being able to convey one's feelings. But at the same time, these are the kind of things you would want to watch Heavenly Forest for. These are the kind of things you know to expect from this story. And honestly, I think this movie takes those tropes and does well with them. But overall, what did I think of Heavenly Forest, especially after rewatching it in this day and age? I still love it, and this movie didn't make me cry rewatching it again, but I still found myself under the spell of Miyazaki Aoi and that big bright smile. And I have to admit, when I watched it the first time, it legit made me cry. Heavenly Forest is a story about regret, it's a story about fighting confidence in oneself and overcoming anxieties, and it's also a story about growing up. And it's definitely a romantic movie I will still recommend in this day and age. And so yeah, everyone, those are my thoughts on Heavenly Forest. What did you guys think? Or what kind of questions did you guys have? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to leave a like in this video and subscribe to Asian Filmist for more reviews and discussions on Asian films. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.